This is the 13th session in our bi-monthly Singapore's Declares and Shares series, which is a wonderful series bringing together a range of different people and topics to discuss areas which we all hold dear and are key passions for us. By way of a brief introduction, Construction Declares, now known as Built Environment Declares, is an online petition uniting all strands of the construction and built environment. It's quite a young movement. It started in May 2019 and already has more than 9,200 signatories, most of which are companies in various disciplines across 28 countries around the globe. The number of employees, professionals engaged in the signatory companies is more than 1 million, which is a great number. And it shows that there is a real drive that we can start to move the dial in action rather than just talk. And I'm sure here we'll learn lots about that. Locally, in January 2020, Singapore joined the movement, first of all with architects and structural engineers declaring. And then in June 2020, the Environmental Consultants Declare platform, which is the global one run out of Singapore, was set up. So that means there's another broader piece to the puzzle of the cross-professional disciplines in environmental design consulting are able to come together. At the same time, the Singapore Landscape Architects joined the declaration, and we now have locally 55 Singapore-based signatory companies. So again, we are a good hub for this movement. Without further ado, today we have two wonderful speakers. One you should definitely recognize who normally does this introduction, so Dr. Hussein from Ramboll. The second, Professor Carlos from SUTD. And these speakers will share insights on the current status and potential future directions of design for the built environment. Both of them bring lots of experience and insights into this, and hopefully we'll be able to apply these lessons of wisdom from them. Prasoon has kindly accepted to moderate today's session. So for those who don't know, Prasoon is the co-founder and CEO of Billion Bricks. He's a President Design Awardee, a prevalent TEDx speaker and social justice campaigner working towards eradicating homelessness. So over to you, Prasoon, and thank you everyone for taking time.
All right, thank you, Benjamin, and welcome everyone to this 13th session of Singapore Declares and Share series. I was one of the speakers last time around, and the roles have switched this time, and I'm supposed to not only introduce, but also moderate two very esteemed guests that we have. They're very prevalent in the academic scene here in Singapore and across the world. And I have my linkage to academia stopped at least 20 years ago. So let's see how well do I do today. I'd first like to welcome Carlos, who's going to start this discussion. A lot of people had told me that I should meet Carlos for almost like many years in Singapore, but we never got a chance to meet unless he stood next to me at an award function, and that's when we got talking. Carlos is an architect and professor specializing in digital design and sustainable manufacturing methods. His research and practice focuses on 3D printing architecture, parametric sustainable space making, and resource optimized structures. In addition, he's author of the top seller book, 3D Printing Architecture, Workflows, Applications, and Trends, published by Springer. He's a recipient of the President's Design Award, the highest distinction of designs and designers here in Singapore. So over to you, Carlos. You've got 10 minutes to speak on the subject. Looking forward to it. Good luck.
Thank you, President. Thanks everyone for being here. It's a pleasure to open this session today. I'm gonna try to stick to 10 minutes, but I know myself, I might exceed a little bit the 10 minutes. I will try to go through the slides in a quite agile way. Well, to bring some insights to this topic, right? Today, I'm bringing some reflections on what we call circular futures from my perspective, right? I'm quite biased. I'm an architect by training, although I'm in academia, but my education is in architecture, so I'm quite biased on the way that I design or I understand design. So first, just to give some context on the, let's say, origins of circularity. I mean, long story short, we could say that, that the way that we could look at this is like why our system could behave like an ecosystem in a way that the resources, that basically the waste that we produce, can be actually the resources for another species. So in the end, to keep the ball rolling. And that is, quite nicely diagrammed here. So you can see the traditional design process or traditional manufacturing process, where the extraction, production, use, and end of use follows a line. Now it gets more complex, and there are more opportunities and more strategic opportunities to make a change, to improve sustainability, and to move from the single-use architecture paradigm, or the take, make, and waste, to a more circular approach. So then we should design workflows that are giving justice to this new contract with our environment, from contemplating the landscape from our boxes to being the landscape. So that requires a change. And today I'm going to bring like 5 directions that I'm pushing in my research lab in SUTD. That there are small experiences, but I think they bring big questions. So that's one way that I find that we can tackle this complex reality that we are living in, bottom up, try to redesign our relation with the environment. So the first one is that following the concept of waste is food. And then in this case, we developed a system in a way that we could produce concrete formwork in a way that doesn't become scrap, but could become actually positive for the environment. So we developed the technology of 3D printing robotic equipment using clay. And the clay in this case was going to be used to be the formwork of the concrete structure that we're going to use. So this is the look of the formwork, which is actually quite stunning in tectonic properties. And this is the product that we did in collaboration with Web Structures and with Dynamic Funds. We were able to push the project forward. And you can see here the approach. The robot actually is printing while we are casting concrete. So it allows for tall structures, so we can definitely control much better and define more intricate shapes on concrete structures. And of course, the positive part as well is when it demolds by itself. It dries out and it falls down, revealing the structure that is casted, and that goes to the soil, and that will be positive for the growth of the soil. So also the texture that we can create and the relation with more vernacular architecture is produced by using high-end technology. And that leads to this digital vernacular relation that I'm presenting as well here, which is understanding nature and try to go with the laws that actually govern in nature and try to extend it somehow. So in this case, we're working with bamboo, which is a renewable, fast-growing, and powerful carbon sink. And we're moving from a simplistic relationship between connecting, let's say, to bamboo poles, which actually works and is actually traditionally well done. But we wanted to challenge that and work with the material information, with the geometry of the material of the bamboo, in a way that we can extend it through, right? So the idea was to use a relatively entry-level technology, which is a 2D scanner, and to register the information of each of the bamboo poles that we were going to use in the construction, and to digitize, to vectorize the bitmap image into vectors. And with the vectors, we have all the information that we need to interface the bamboo poles. So you can see here the workflow that we created. So it's a new design workflow in a way that we can make these structures from the information of the material. So each of the bamboo poles is different. So we need to print a component that fits to the millimeter the shape of the bamboo. And for that, we use entry-level 3D printers. Each of these printers can be bought like $100. You can print one of these nodes. You can build actually using bioplastic. So we develop as well the connection system in a way that we can extend the geometry of the bamboo poles and to merge in a smoother way. That was a project that was temporarily sitting in Daxton Hill. And this is the result of that project. We took as well our research on biodegradable materials and bamboo to vertical farming. So we are developing this system as well to target food security as one of the important directions that we are following with our research. And I think it's crucial as well to achieve the 2030 goal. The next one is talking about elevated waste. So here is a statement on like, waste doesn't need to look like waste necessarily in the end. So this is the client brief in this case. It's kind of the new type of client brief, like what can I do with this? And they come with all the ways that they're producing their business in this case. And then our approach was like we figure out what. So we need to find how, the process. So from the cardboard boxes using CNC and nesting algorithms, we design chairs. From cardboard, we design tables that conceal a structure inside. From pallets, we created these nested large dining tables. From plastic bottles, we developed the whole workflow to shred the bottles, to create flakes, and to 3D print tiles to create large-scale chandeliers. And lastly, large-scale chandeliers, but using robotic arm and pellets. So we created the whole space, about 500 square meters. We designed the space into 3 bands. The red one is the exhibition space. The middle is actually the dining room space. And towards the side is a long table to have a more contact with the views. But the process was actually quite challenging to fabricate these pieces. Needed so much invention. You can see the scale. You can see the printing process here, layer by layer. Each panel takes 25 hours to print, but the result is like this. So it's about 250 kilos of plastic here. So in total, we repurposed more than 30,000 bottles in the whole space. Also the packaging for the boxes, tables. So this is how it looks, the 2 chandeliers. And of course, it also requires some innovation in the details. So you cannot go for standard pieces. You are designing every single inch of material here. So innovation on connection, on edge designs, and how the light actually is installed here, or even the assembly process, everything is new. So you need to start almost from scratch. But the result is very rewarding when the space is set up. Is actually quite nice to see that the waste actually doesn't look anymore like that. It's a fully functional space, and even the employees were involved in the fabrication and assembly of the parts. So now when they go there, they feel the connection with the site and they understand where the things come from, and their business actually feels like it's actually more sustainable, and there's a way to go for them. They want to do more. The next one is reduced by design, and then following like digitally driven processes to achieve nature-inspired systems. So in this case, you can see the Google Maps of a piece of a brain. And so we follow that pattern, that complexity in the network to create a system that adapts to the local conditions, to react to the forces that are undergoing. So it's something that can definitely use the information, the local information, to actually create a shape that is efficient for that. So this network is created as a system that is a big contrast to what is standard in the market. And the most important thing is like it's mostly air. It's a thin shell, it's 90%. So with 3D printing, we decide where not to put the material, which is very important. The result is a complex structure. It's a complex system that creates also a different relation with the environment, with nature. Thin threshold as a way that we are part of nature within it, and the threshold is reduced to the minimum expression, and thicknesses are almost dematerialized. It blends with nature and is part of it, inspired by it. So this system, we're pushing it through as well. This was a pavilion that was for 3 years at the Gardens by the Bay. And now we're pushing the system to target as well construction of residential units and other infrastructures. So the next step is to get the full certification for permanent construction that we're actually working at the moment in this project for a residential project. And that's, for us, it's just the beginning of using this system that uses way less energy compared to CNC machining of metal of metal fabrication. So in this case, we still use metal as a material, but the way that we treat the material is completely different compared to standard means. Lastly, we're moving to repurpose. This is the last part. So basically, we're actually trying to solve or target solve the problem of like the waste that we have in construction. So in this project, this small pavilion, we went to a demolition site in Singapore. We 3D scanned it before, and we salvaged some of the components, some of the windows, some of the grills. And with those elements we registered, we nested into a constructed system that was using aluminum to create panels and to erect low-cost constructions that would be targeting underdeveloped countries. So there was experience that we did with reuse, and it's also for us a way to go. So just to conclude, I think we, as designers, we must redefine our contract with our natural and built environments. So the new constraints that we have right now shouldn't be a burden, should be something that open new ways of practicing architecture. And that relationship with our environment should be created bottom up, because any single opportunity to make a change by design is never wasted. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carlos, for this beautiful presentation. I think the videos were very enticing to the eyes as well, along with how you kind of structured the presentation under various sites as well. I'd now like to welcome Dr. Rezai. He's, I think, one of the most soft-spoken people I've seen. I wonder, but when you hear him speak, I think what he speaks is very sharp and very articulate. Dr. Rezai is an engineer, a design visionary, and an educator, one of the initiators of the concept of fusion engineering. He's the first and only engineer to receive the coveted title of Designer of the Year from the President of Singapore. He's very passionate about the process of advanced computational design and a holistic approach to architecture plus structure plus environment. Dr. Rezai, you've got 10 minutes. Over to you.
You're muted. We can see your screen. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Thank you, Carlos, for the brilliant presentation. And in fact, I'm taking the cue from your presentation. The redefinition of our relationship with the natural environment is something that I know you are very passionate about. It came out of your presentation, and I'm very passionate about. I'm going to talk for the next 10 minutes about that. The title of my talk is Bearing the Brunt. It's a tongue-in-cheek title, the credit for which should go to Richard Hassell. I told him that I had a bit of a problem with the definition in the Brundtland report of sustainable development, and that I wanted to put some slides together and have some provocations in this session, which I also had in a recent RIBA event. I start my talk with a disclaimer. The statements that I'm going to make in the next 10 minutes or so are my personal opinions, obviously, for which I shall remain responsible. While I'm critical of some of the tenets of the Brundtland report, my utterances must not in any way detract from the good intents and the hard work of many sustainability warriors, myself included, and many other people who are on this call, I know, who have tirelessly worked in the trenches across the globe and over the years in the hope of providing a better future for all. We also invite questions from the audience. If you can put in your questions in the Q&A session, that would be great. Well, in the way of a prelude, as I was putting these slides together, I came across this statement by a gentleman whom I don't know personally, who said that in the quest for sustainable development, the only thing more dangerous than the absence of progress is the illusion of it. I'll read it again. In the quest for sustainable development, the only thing more dangerous than the absence of progress is the illusion of it. It was by a gentleman called Adam Carell, a partner at Ernst Young Australia. Of course, the credit for this statement goes to him. And I just wondered whether, while we have been making some progress along the sustainability curve, since the Brundtland report of the late 80s, whether how much of that is real progress and how much of that is encouragement that we've given to ourselves, and whether we have deluded ourselves, and whether we need to now move and jump onto a new curve. I'm sure you all know, but in the way of introduction, the Brundtland Commission was a commission headed by Ms. Brundtland, commissioned by the UN, and they worked from 1983 to 87, and that was back in the mid to late 80s. The depletion of the ozone layer and the global warming, and the idea was that the report would come up with proposals to come up with long-term solutions for saving the environment without compromising global economic development, as known, as unfortunately, as measured by things like GDP and others. And I think there lies a fundamental flaw in the brief, but the Commission gallantly took on the brief and came up with the report called Our Common Future back in 1987. The report is more famously known as the Brundtland report. Now, one of the most famous sort of issues and items in the report is the definition of what sustainable development is. And that is where it brought sustainability sort of into the mainstream. And we have since had many other initiatives and movements in the past 35 years built on that definition. And it is that definition that I question today and put it to you that there is a flaw in that definition. The definition is the sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The issue is that this definition, for me, officiates from good people who were obviously members of the Commission with good intentions. It officiates a separation between us and the natural environment. It draws the line that we are separate from the natural environment, and the natural environment is reduced to a resource for us to use and to respond to our needs, but also not to be too greedy and don't use all of it, but leave something for others to use as well. So that's dereliction of that relationship between us and the natural environment and separation from us between the two of us is really the key thing that I have a major issue with, and I think a lot of us have been trying to address and see how we can get ourselves back into the natural, integrate with the natural environment. But we are building on, unfortunately, on this definition, and I think that definition needs to be changed. Now, under the watch of the report since 1987, let's have a look at a few environmental metrics and drivers. I'm sure everything that I'm going to say today with these metrics are things that you all know and have seen in different places. Some of you have worked on them, but I just compiled 2 or 3 of these drivers. One is carbon. The famous graph of CO2 equivalence as parts per million over time has been going up forever. And you have seen it in many different forms, from back in late 18th century, the beginning of the industrial movement, where we had parts per million of CO2 equivalents in the atmosphere was 278. Back in 1984, it had gone up to 345. Now is 416. So when you look at this, the increase from 1790s to 1984, almost 190 years, was about 67 parts per million. In the preceding 35 years, in the last 35 years, since the report, under the eyes of the report, under the initiatives of the report, it has gone up by 71. So in the past 35 years, after this major movements by us all under the auspice of sustainability, the environment in terms of CO2 equivalent has become worse off than it was in the preceding 190 years. And that's where the report is. So you see before the report and after the report. In terms of total gigaton of not parts per million, the total gigaton related to energy sector, which is a major sector of sort of emission of CO2 equivalent emitting parts of our activities on the planet. Back in 1946, just after the Second World War, the number was 4.63 gigatons. It went up to 8.42 in 58, and it kept going up. In 1988, it was about 22 gigatons. 97, so much, 2000, none that. And right now, we're talking about something about 36 gigatons. You can almost draw a straight line through it, as if no major initiative happened to try to reduce this tendency. And that is where the Brundtland report came at. That is where our major initiative on sustainability happened. Before that and after that, it's as if that line, vertical line, wasn't there, as if no new initiative started. The famous graph that you've all seen, but on here, again, it shows the parts per million, but it is now color-coded. The first World Climate Conference was in 1979. First IPCC assessment report in 1990, first UN Climate Change Conference 1995, Kyoto Protocol 2005, Copenhagen Accord 2009, Paris Agreement 2015, and recently the COP26. With all these good efforts, as if these efforts were not there, the deleterious effect of CO2 emission continues to go up, and that is where the Brundtland report came out. Again, you look at the before and after of it, you don't see a major decline in these things. Biodiversity from 1970 till now, we've decimated that. On average, the tyranny of averages is gone down to 32%. 68% of the biodiversity on the planet has been lost. In certain parts of the world, the Amazon forest, etc., the loss is in the 90s, and 90%. And that's where the Brundtland report came out. So, you know, more and more forest area losses. That is our relationship with the environment, our relationship within ourselves, our own species, the inequality that exists in our societies, overall share of total income going to the richest 1% since 1900. The graph going down means we are becoming more equal. Going up means we're becoming less equal. And of course, you know, since 1980s, inequality has enhanced. And I'm not suggesting that Brundtland report has done that, but I'm suggesting that maybe the Brundtland report has not had the desired effect of at least helping to alleviate that. Now, of course, we have a choice. We've so far had choices and options. The routes that we've had so far has been looking at this graph and the projected temperature rise. The red path is the path of we don't have a problem, we don't need the solution, we continue as we are. You continue as we are, the projected temperature rises of 4.1 to 4.8 degrees by the end of the century. And that is the path of the deniers, no problem, no solution needed. The path of the sustainability, the optimizers, the doing less harm, which is what to a large extent, Brundtland has been responsible for, gets us to about 2.9 degrees centigrade increase in temperature since the pre-industrial average. Now, that 2.9 degrees is also not sustainable, and the pun is intended in here. Under the watch of this thing, we've got this sort of statistics. Construction waste in 2025 is going to be 1.1 billion tons every year. We continuously demolishing our buildings, which has the same environmental impact as far as CO2 into the atmosphere is concerned, as far as fires. Every time you demolish a building, you're actually as if you're setting fire to a small forest. Global chemical usage is expected to double between 2019 and 2030, double. A large part of it is in construction industry, and a large portion of these chemicals are toxic. But we do have another alternative, and the alternative is what we all of us, I'm sure in here, have been advocating, the path to 1.5 degrees, and that is the one to regeneration, the regenerative design. It requires a completely different frame of mind to sustainability and the attitude of Brundtland report. Regenerative design, if you take the natural environment of richness, its colors and shapes and forms, etc., and the built environment, which is very frugal in forms and shapes, despite the efforts of course, beautiful efforts of people like Carlos and the team, but huge amount of wastage being produced. The regenerative environment is one that gets our built environment, but underpins it, powers it with the wisdom of nature, with the systems prevalent in nature. I've got another couple of minutes, Prasoon. I hope you don't mind. On the sustainable design curve, the terminology and lexicon is about conventional materials, it's about fossil fuels. The European community now considers gas as being a green source of energy, sort of. Traditional design methods and basic design ambitions, etc., etc., etc. It's about the sort of path of optimizers. Whereas on the regenerative design curve, the lexicon is about new materials and composite sort of thing that Carlos talked to us about, definitely about renewable energy, the sort of thing that Prasoon is a warrior for now with his architecture and his buildings. We were talking about augmented design methods, systems-based development, briefs, multiplicity of clients, a planet and ecology-based approach. You know, it's about interests of the unborn when we talk about future generations. So all of these things should go into our briefs and into the work that we do, and it does in regenerative design curve, and it takes us a path to the 1.5 degrees. Now, if we are all stuck with the word sustainability and we want to continue to say that, talk sustainability, maybe the one on the left is old sustainability, the one on the right is new sustainability, but the two are not extensions of one another. New sustainability is a new curve, it's a disruption. We need to think like that and move away from that separate position between us and the natural environment. But of course, we do have choices, and I of course don't have the time to share some examples of how regenerative design, regenerative thinking can lead to beautiful buildings. A lot of them have been built. I would recommend a book by my dear friend Nirmal Krishnani, Eco-Puncture, Transforming Architecture and Urbanism in Asia. It has got beautiful examples of buildings and land and urbanism and other type of projects founded on regenerative design and regenerative thinking. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rezai, for that very provocative and very thoughtful discussion. And I like the fact that how some of the things were both complementary and contrasting to what Carlos was talking about, especially when I looked at the video of the building getting demolished, which coincidentally Carlos also had it, but with a different perspective to yours. So I think it was very fascinating. And I hope that it will encourage our audience to ask some more questions as well. I don't see any questions here, so it means that either I have a lot of opportunity to talk, or you guys are making my life harder where I have to think for a lot more questions than I thought I'll be prepared for. But I'll kind of kickstart the questions while I think you guys should start typing in your questions, and I'll be happy to take them over for Carlos and Dr. Rezai. You could even address to each of them if you have specific questions to what they spoke on. But I want to start with one comparison that I noticed in both of your presentations, that both of you started your presentation with a disclaimer. So Carlos started by saying that his presentation is biased as an architect, and you started by saying that these are your personal opinions and you wanted to kind of safeguard yourself from the opinion. And I wanted to just start maybe with Carlos to say that we architects, I mean, we, at least two of us are architects, and Dr. Rezai works very closely with a lot of architects, and even as an engineer, we all design for the people, and we think that we are kind of representative through our work of what the world needs. So why do you think you needed that disclaimer to say that these are more biased opinions and they're not generic for everyone to kind of follow or be part of?
Yeah, I mean it's a good one. I think I think architects we have a certain, like, we're talking about burden. I mean, when we are in our especially education years, like I started architecture in 1996, right? So we never got, like, somehow embedded in the education any of the things that actually, or most of the things we're actually now talking in this talk here about, like, renewable materials, energy sources that are like a positive for environment, and even design workflows that could actually change the way that we build, or even our relationship with the natural environment. So I think we had this, baggage of, like, we only care about aesthetics, or we only care about composition, or we look at things that still are relevant, of course, right? But I think that mindset was not embedded, unless, I mean, it comes from yourself, right? You're naturally driven to really get there. But I mean, so that's one thing that maybe, it's a bit pessimistic in a way that, I mean, of course, there's always ways to change and redefine yourself as an architect and as a professional, but it means that most, I would say, of our fellow architects, or maybe even developers that are related to construction, I think they are not sensitive to these things that we are talking about, at least not mainstream. I mean, it's like not happening. I mean, still cities are mostly built the same way that were built maybe 15 to 20 years ago. So no actual change still happening, right? So I think we I don't know, I feel like it's a small group. I think, like, is of course making a lot of noise, but I don't know, it's like we need to really impact more as well, maybe from the institution, from universities in which I am, try to really open the eyes early to our students that really this actually matters as much as the composition of, like, a facade. I mean, we really need to address these questions in an early stage, not when other things are really addressed.
Thank you, Carlos. And what do you think, Dr. Rezai? I mean, Carlos mentioned that some of the opinions that he has, or we architects have, are not mainstream, right? And the mainstream work is very different. Would you say the same, that in mainstream conversations, the definition of what you're questioning of sustainability is still accepted, and therefore you have to kind of take a cautious view in having a perspective which is new and different?
Yes, I think my disclaimer was partly obviously to say that these are my personal opinions. These are very, very highly respectable people and reports and initiatives that I'm questioning here, and I do appreciate that I'm doing that with the benefit of the hindsight. So that is also looking back at and wondering whether 35 years ago they ought to have said something else. Definitely, these sort of efforts brought the S word, sustainability, gradually into the mainstream, and which was a good thing. But what has happened now is, as you're saying, the mainstream is talking about sustainability. People are trying to get onto the curve of sustainability because the metrics, the parameters, and all are going the wrong way. So we need to do more sustainability. And I just wondered whether that is not becoming from what was an asset to a liability, whether now we should, in fact, instead of getting more and more of us onto the curve of sustainability, we should actually not say goodbye to sustainability, because that has brought us here, and it's not going to take us where we need to be going in the next 20 or 30 years, that we have time to still try and turn the curve. So, and my disclaimer also was not to discourage people whom with the best of intentions are working on various fronts on sustainability. Definitely the beautiful work that Carlos does, and many other people whom we all know are working on agriculture, on energy, on mobility, etc. And I just wondered why, with so many good people, so many good initiatives, and we saw some beautiful ones of that in Carlos's work, the curve is still going the wrong way. It is still moving away from us. So that was that. So I definitely don't want to discourage anyone. It is just a provocation for us to see whether it is time for us to say good to that tradition and then move on to the next curve.
Yeah, in fact, I want to take on this, what you mentioned in the end, and you kind of referred in between your answer as well about that we have 20, 30 years to kind of address if we really want to make a difference here, and why is it really not happening, right? I mean, at fast enough. I think that's a really key question. And Carlos mentioned, you mentioned in your presentation about the 2030 goals, right? That a lot of countries and now a lot of corporations also have come forward and kind of pledged towards those goals, right? And you mentioned quite a few strategies through your work, which you called as waste as food, digital vernacular, biodegradable materials, elevated waste, and reduced by design. Would you think that these things would prepare the world by 2030? What some of your work that you're doing to catch up with the timeline, or even what Dr. Rezai is saying, that we probably have a little bit longer for about 20 to 30 years. Are we moving fast enough in terms of coming up with these new ideas?
I think that, I mean, I can sense that there's maybe because now it's trendy, or because other reasons that are more profound, but every single like client or institution that approach is talking about like how to make it better. So at least now there's a certain sense of like guilt that if you don't follow, you're gonna stay behind, or somehow your business is not gonna be like looking good because you're not doing the right thing. So I think in that sense, I think that the pressure is stronger now. So I think that the speed is not gonna be linear. I think really is gonna really be faster in the coming months or years. So I believe that all these efforts and like working towards like a regenerative architecture or ways of doing things in a different way, I think are gonna be amplified. So I don't know if that will be enough to really start seeing the curve like bending. I hope so, but I'm optimistic about that because I see more and more people that maybe just a few months or even just 1 year ago didn't even care about it. Now it's kind of main topic of conversation, and they come to you like really asking, I need to do something. And of course, maybe the reading at some point could be very superficial. Like, I want to do something that looks good, but we need to go deeper as designers. Say, well, it needs to look good, but needs to actually make huge impact. So scalability needs to be embedded. So in the solutions that we propose to really make the impact that we want.
But in your research, like I'm sure you can define better, like when you calculate how much of waste it can save or how much of CO2 is lesser, you showed some graphs on how much more efficient is it. Is time a criteria as well, that how fast it can be adopted and the technology be developed, and can we catch up on the time? Is that a criteria?
Yeah, I think also, well, it's high time, of course. I mean, we'll still maybe have a few years to really see, what can we do in a way that we can improve what we do. But I think we need to start taking action now and find a way that with the available technology, with the available knowledge, start to make the impact now. So I think timelines and and speed of implementation is also crucial here. So we might need, to research like further to really implement another process, but I'm really interested in implementing processes now, and hopefully, everyone's like doing, what is needed to rush and to expedite kind of this ongoing projects to really show the change that we need to make.
And Dr. Reza, you showed a couple of graphs starting with the CO2 emissions, right? And you talked about how in 1987 the Brundtland report came, but it's still growing exponentially. You also talked about inequality, and then you mentioned the word that on the biodiversity side, we've literally decimated, and really there's no change happening that we would have probably seen in 1987, right? But is there also data to say that even though it's exponentially growing, or the line that you showed is straight up, so there's really, you don't see a kink, but would it be fair to say that if that report probably hadn't come and sustainability and the new definition was not part of the conversation, things would probably be worse off and we would see maybe a more steeper graph, and that's probably we don't see?
Yeah, we could say that. Yeah, definitely you could say that. We could also say that the rise of China happened around the same time, back in the 80s, and the amount of development that has happened in China, and how any great efforts by Brundtlands of this world back in the 80s would be sort of mitigated, if that's the right word, by this tremendous amount of development that happened. We could say all those things, yes, to some extent, but facts are facts, and that initial statement that yes, we can be happy about the fact that we made progress. Yes, we have stopped the thing from getting worse, but are we moving in the right direction? Are the graphs moving in the right direction? The three colored one that you also have seen in your presentation, you have that as well, the deniers and the sustainability ones, which are now called the delayers. We now call those who are saying that, okay, well, we need to be optimizing things and etc. We're calling them that they know that the challenge. They are the delayers, and the delayers are the new deniers, as it were. And the fact is that the green curve, as you know, is a completely different. It requires a different attitude from all of us in all aspects of our lives. And unless we have that, and unless we stay and feel comfortable on that amber curve and try to push it down, we're getting to a point where the water is rising, and we're not learning how to swim, and we continue to be walking, and at some stage we are all going to get drowned. So we need to move from the curve of walking while the water is rising to a curve of swimming, and we need to do it now, so that we can turn the adversity of a rising water in a walking situation to an asset in swimming. And swimming and walking are two different things. We need to start teaching our kids how to swim, how to be regenerative. We should not teach people how to be sustainable anymore. Those who know it and are doing it, fine, that horizon we need. But the new guys who are coming onto the scene and more awareness that has been created, we should not teach them sustainability. We should teach them regenerative design.
I mean, we still use sustainability as the word in our household. I probably need to go back.
We all do. No, we all. I do that as well, because when I say regenerative thinking, in certain quarters, they don't know what I'm talking about. I say actually, it is like sustainability was, but it's a new thing, and it's one of the questions, in fact, in the Q&A box about what do you do when everybody is talking sustainability in your company, and you say regenerative design. It is a challenge, but I think we need to take that challenge, and we need to do that.
And do you see any risk? I mean, you are saying that maybe the moving forward, or maybe the right terminology or the approach, maybe not terminology is not the right word, is regenerative design, where nature and the built environment are coming together in a more symbiotic way to kind of coexist, and we kind of take the learnings and apply. Do you see any risks that 30 years down the line, or 35 years down the line, we will probably look back and say that maybe that was also, it had some gaps in that thing, or you're pretty confident that that's probably the way to go?
Well, as of now, I'm pretty confident, but I'm as confident as any person with an inquiring mind can be. I'm open to new ideas. As of now, I think this is the green path is the path to take. And there's a lot of research, a lot of good work that shows that if we are really serious about staying within the 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, we are discounting gradually. People now are less talking about 1.5 degrees and more like 2 degrees, right? That neither of the green, red or the amber parts will take us there. That we need to take the green path, which is the regenerative one. It is an appreciation that a degeneration has taken place over the past 200-300 years, maybe a bit longer, maybe over the past 10,000 years since we became citizens, that a degeneration has taken place. Now we need to regenerate back. Our relationship with the environment was a lot better, I'm told. I wasn't there then, but I'm told we were actually an integral part of the environment not so long ago, considering the history of the whole universe. But we then degenerated. We now need to regenerate. So I think I'm as confident as I can be, but I'm open, like most of you open-minded people, to new ideas. But for now, I think we need to push on that curve, and it does require new words, new lexicon. I think I'm very particular about that. I think we need to change our vocabulary because some of those old vocabularies do not respond to our current needs.
I just want maybe Carlos to respond to that, and then I'll take more questions from the audience as they are popping up as well. I mean, Carlos, you are in a institution and environment which is at the forefront of developing that lexicon, right? So is there something which is happening in your environment that you see or new that's coming up, which would shape how we talk and develop in the future?
You mean from academia or from the environment where I am? I see. I mean, if I look, for instance, at the work that our students are doing right now, even like 5 years ago, even the words that are using right now to describe the project is completely different. Even the goals, even the approach to designing is completely different. There's much more awareness about, like, the relationship with the environment. There's, like, from the beginning, the topics that they're putting for the thesis are actually super aligned to what we're talking about right now, and they are really I mean, not just trying to target that because it's a good thesis, like, to get a good grade. It's because they really believe on it. So I think that, and I agree that we need to use the right lexicon, or to change the words, because otherwise they will be not effective anymore. People will talk about sustainability in a way that, well, the thing that, as you mentioned before, is like, it's an illusion, it's working, but it's not. I mean, we need to really activate it again. We need to really trigger something that is not embedded in that word, to really, trigger the new actions that we need to do. So I think it's maybe our role to switch. I agree that sustainability is overused and at some point became a bit void. I mean, and not even clear the direction. So probably, from our positions, to try to convey still some relevance of the word, but how it should evolve, because now, I mean, things have changed and our contract needs to be different. So the words we need to use are different, and I think that's also our role as well. From early education stages to the relationship we have with clients and other institutions.
All right, thank you, Carlos. I have a question from Anna here, who's asking about, what do you think about biophilic design principles? Do you think they can also be used to design a more nature-integrated nuclear power plant in the future? Carlos, you want to take that question?
Well, I mean, I really attracted to biophilic design. I think there's a lot of potential in there. Needs to be used probably in the right way. I mean, it's not just mimicry, like, not just taking just a few layers of it. Is really embracing, the principles behind, and then to be able to translate into a design is not a trivial thing, right? I mean, so that's a process that needs some iterations to get there. But when well used, I think it's a powerful design approach, and I think can be implemented in different ways, not just maybe a nuclear power, but in different typologies.
And similar to that, Carlos, there's one more question from Romeo about how would additive manufacturing revolutionize the way we build in the short time that we have? I think it kind of goes back to we were talking about now, right? So
Yeah.
what do you have to say about that?
I mean, I think it's changing now. I mean, probably the scale is not well perceived yet, but the technology is ready. I mean, it changed in many ways that you can reduce the the transportation carbon footprint. You can actually produce components right next to the construction site. You can send to other places. They can print the same actually file that you have without sending it. So it's definitely impacting now. Maybe not at the volume that we would like to, but I think I think additive manufacturing is instrumental to fulfill the goals that we are actually talking about today. It's not the only path, only technology that we are going to use, but I think definitely is actually relevant. And there's a lot of innovation to it that in the coming years will be effective into construction. Now the volumes you can print are bigger, the mechanical properties are much better, the control of the material we can use is there, so we can use it more and more, and we hope that the building authorities start to really trust the technology to really be mainstreamly implemented as well in construction.
And Dr. Rezai, there's a question from Helen who's asking that a lot of work is happening around Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, which is really around operational carbon. And a lot of clients are neglecting Scope 3 and embodied carbon in property assets. So how can that be addressed? And you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that are that Scope 3 must be included. And the initiatives that and certification and registrations which do exist without naming them, that says that okay, yes, we are registered there. It means that we are going to be achieving net zero carbon emission by 2030 by this or by that, is which excludes a big chunk of the carbon emissions, which are the embodied ones, are flawed. I think that those are again part of that that sort of flawed culture that we have developed around sustainability. I'm not questioning the intentions of these people and these institutions by any means. It is just that some of them say that okay, well, we have to start from somewhere, so we start with Scope 1 and then add Scope 2. Maybe so later they talk about add Scope 3, etc. But later it's going to be too late. And we lull ourselves into this thinking that oh, my company is registered with this or with that, so we are okay for another 15 years, and we realize that actually a big chunk of the emissions are left out. So definitely Scope 3 must be included. It must be included now, and we must press for it and push for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the keyword today definitely has been now, which probably has been said the most number of times. So I think we are running almost close to time. I'm not sure how many seconds we are left with, but I'll probably ask both of you to kind of sum up your thoughts in just about 15 to 20 seconds. And especially Dr. Rezai, if you could maybe start, but I want you to address one of the questions as well, which is there hope for us in the future?
Yes. In 10 to 15 seconds, there is definitely hope for us. So the hope exists on the curve of regenerative thinking, on the curve of Horizon 3, as it were, which requires all of us to be active on it. Techniques and technology and ideas and things already exist. For every problem that I mentioned today, we have a technical solution. Us engineers and architects and practitioners have already worked out the solutions. So it is the political will that is now required for these things to be applied. And yes, there is definitely hope. That's why we're here.
All right, Carlos, how hopeful are you? In 20 seconds, let's hear from you.
I'm optimistic by nature, so I'm really hopeful that we will get there. It requires effort. It requires like transformation, different layers, not just designers, but all the layers. Well, but most important thing is like to get there. Maybe it take us more effort. It takes us longer to get there. It takes us go deeper into understanding the questions to really give that answer, right? So it's not doing things business as usual. We need to change. We need to make a difference, and that requires maybe learning, maybe upgrading ourselves in a way that we can deliver what is required right now. So if we keep doing the same traditional practice, we won't get there. So I think we need to really be active in a way that we can change the way we design, build, and use our natural environment.
Okay, so I think I'll end by saying that I'm hopeful that this hope is not illusional. It's actually real. And I'll let Benjamin kind of close today's session. But thank you, everyone. A great session. We've exceeded by a few minutes, but I hope you'll bear and you'll listen to Benjamin.
Thanks very much. Well, I mean, given those summary statements at the end, I think I don't need to add any further sound bites to this. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear the thoughts and some great line of questioning as well. Whether that leaves you hopeful or not is another question, given the prevalence of sustainability in its mainstream state versus what it should be, which is actually regenerative, and that kind of appropriation of the phrase for anything slightly different than BAU or BAU just rebranded. So thank you very much to everyone who has attended. This is number 13, which is unlucky for some, but we're looking forward to more Singapore Declares and Shares going forward. So thank you to everyone who's attended, and thank you to our wonderful speakers and moderator. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.